Nation. The hobby is the people. Weekly news and interviews. It's your number one source. Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
Welcome to another stocked and loaded episode of the Sports Card Nation podcast, the show that brings you all the important hobby news, discussions, debates, opinions, info, and interviews with key hobby and sports dignitaries. Also, if you're good, you know we are going to give away something. Now, here's the guy that wanted the cards more than the gum. John Newman.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Episode 76 of the Sports Card Nation. Real happy to be back. As always, we hope this recording finds you doing well, you and yours. And on that front, real quick, things a little good news. Not in the employment department, but in some of the things opening back up, and you're hearing some of the sports leagues talk about potential restarts. Sans fans, no one in the seats, but at least we may get some more sports back. I know we've had, the NFL draft, some racing stuff, UFC fight, but maybe slowly but surely we'll get a little bit close to getting more sports back. So we'll see. Things are trending at least better-wise on that front. Also on the product front, we're hearing some products are not going to be maybe as backlogged or delayed as we once thought. So some good news on the horizon. Really excited for this episode. I'm excited for every episode of SCN, but this one in particular, we have a guest making his first ever. Surprisingly, I did not know that. I actually asked him that at the end of the interview, kind of assuming it wasn't. And he said it was. It's his first ever podcast appearance. He did a bang-up job. You'd never know it was his first. Mr. Max Steiner. You may know him as the proprietor, owner of Sportslot Corporation. And so, I'm not going to lie, it wasn't easy to get. We kind of traded emails back and forth for a couple months. He's a busy man. You're going to hear in the interview, he's almost predominantly a one-man show with that site. So he's got his hands full, does a great job. And that platform's been around since the year 2000. So they're celebrating their 20th year. We're going to learn a little bit of how the sausage gets made, as they say, how he started Sports Lots and where it is now. He's going to give you a sneak peek on a few new functions coming to the website. I'm a user, buyer, and seller of the program. I'm going to bring up to him, on this show, we asked some of those tough questions, and I'm going to bring up a couple of things. A year ago, I asked the Twitterverse, some things about Sports Lot they like to see improved, and so I'm going to tell him what those top 3 things were and get his take on it, as rightfully so. And great responses by him. You do anything for 20 years, I don't care what it is, you're doing something right. So kudos to Max and Sports Lots for standing the test of time, 20 years in, and so happy to have him on the show today making his podcast debut. Before we get the show started, I know I do this probably a lot, but I want to thank everyone for listening to the show. Really, it's been a steady incline, and recently this show's doing really well. But recently, the last few weeks, our smaller show, Hobby Quick Hits, has really ramped up. A lot more rotations and listens, and it's like I said, there's no show without you guys, and I want to thank all those who maybe have went over to that show, even if it's from the show or even if it's not. And making both shows just a pleasure and a labor of love to produce. Again, we can't do either show without you, the listener. So, sincere thank you. We do appreciate it. And whenever we get good news and the demos reports come, I immediately am very appreciative of that. So much so, we do giveaways, as you know, on this show. Let me announce a few upcoming that you're going to see. SGC is going to be giving away, I'm sure, some swag at some point here. But also, I'm going to be giving away probably a Mike Trout jersey. I think I got a Zion Williamson Stitch jersey coming in too. One of those two I'm going to give away on probably the Hobby Hotline show, and the other on this show. We got some autograph stuff to give away, and much more coming down the line. So stay tuned. It's not just hopefully not just a great show for you, but you can win some free stuff as well. So we're not going to delay any longer. Let's get this thing rolling.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
Time for this week's
Incoming!
product releases. All right, releasing May 15th, 2019, Leaf Meadow, Perfect Game, All-American Baseball. Also on the 15th, 2019, Panini Chronicles Football. On May 22nd, 2019, 20 Panini Mosaic Basketball Fast Break Retail. 2020 Leaf Memorabilia Vault, May 22nd. Also on May 22nd, 2020, Panini Select Baseball. And on the 20th, 2020 Sage Hit Football Premier Draft High Series Hobby. Remember, with some factory slowdowns and employee reduction due to COVID-19, some of these products may not make it out on time and may be delayed or postponed until further notice. So just keep that in mind. But we're going to keep announcing them as they're scheduled.
Sports Card Nation Podcast is your weekly hobby and sports podcast. Now on tons of platforms including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and many more. Listened to in 44 different countries globally, Sports Card Nation is one of the most interactive podcasts around, providing great content, giveaways, and some of the hobby's best interview guests without time constraints. Thousands can't be wrong. We want to thank all the wonderful listeners around the world, our awesome guests on the show, and our tremendous sponsors making us what we are today. Remember, without you, there's no us.
I know the chunky that left these chunkies. Newman! Open the door, Newman. I know you're in there.
Those sound bites means it's none other than time for Newman's own ramblings, the part of the show where I take a question that I get asked off the air via either email or DM, and I ask it to myself on the air and answer it.
John, you seem like an astute man.
Thank you, Mr. Walken.
Maybe you can help explain something to me.
Well, I'll give it my best shot. Okay, this week's question. Actually, I got asked this question about 4 or 5 different times on different social media platforms. So I figured if I'm getting asked that many times, I might as well use this for my question of the week. It's kind of an obvious one, but a good one nonetheless. And the question is, after the Last Dance has one more week, what do you think happens to Jordan cards, and should I sell them? I think the peak is the ceiling is very close. So if you are going to sell, now's probably pretty close to that time. A lot of people ask me also, will his cards go down after The Last Dance has completed its airing? I think a little bit. There'll be some, I don't want to say the bottom's not going to fall out by any stretch, but there'll be some mild correction. I think your certain cards, your rookies, your precious metal gems, and those sort of key cards are not going to have any sort of significant decrease. But some of your other stuff that kind of just benefited from the show being on may slowly. It's not going to be precipitous. It's going to just happen slowly each week. Some of these prices and sales prices reached will slowly come down. So now's probably the time to sell if that's what you're inclined to do. Now, between now and the next probably 2 to 3 weeks, and then if you wait too long, you'll probably get a little bit less. Not that that's terrible. Jordan stuff still always sells pretty well, but if you're looking to sell kind of at the top of the mountain, next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks is probably right now your chance. And so there you go.
We love our listeners. Without you, there is no us. We care about your opinions and feedback and invite you to reach out to us on any of our social media accounts. On Instagram at SportsCardNation Podcast, Twitter at SportsCardNati1, or email the show at SportsCardNationPC@gmail.com. We don't ask for much, but if you really like the show, give us a shout out. Tell your friends or give us a follow on our social medias. If you enjoy the show, please give us a positive review on iTunes or any of the platforms you are listening on. Thank you.
It's time for What's Cracking. All right, lots of hobby release product news, but a couple non-product news. Let's start with the big news. Everyone's heard it. The National has postponed its end of July, front part of August dates and moved them to the week before Christmas. Still in Atlantic City. I think it was the best unkept secret that the National wasn't going to be able to be held that last week of July with everything going on. But the date they picked is sort of peculiar. I don't know all the reasons why that date, but it's going to be, to me, a tough week. I think a week before Christmas. A lot of people don't like to go to Atlantic City in the winter. It doesn't bother me so much, but I'm a Northeast guy, but not everyone thinks like me. I won't be able to attend, not for lack of want, but I just, with my schedule, I won't be able to I already had taken that week off in July and August. I won't be able to reschedule that. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Again, they also mentioned that December date is tentative, so a lot of it's going to be hinge on who signs up. I have a feeling who can attend and where we are in the COVID-19 process as well. Still on pace for the 2021 National in Chicago, and for sure I will be booking that one. Michael Jordan stuff continues to break ceilings. The 2006-2007 Upper Deck buyback 1986-87 Fleer Jordan rookie autographed just sold for $125K. The card was graded by Beckett Grading an 8.5. The autograph was graded a 10. And what this card was, for the 20th anniversary of the 86-87 Fleer Jordan, Upper Deck bought 23 86-87 Fleer Jordans, had Michael Jordan sign them, and then made them part of their 2006-2007 Upper Deck basketball product. So, pretty cool card, $125K. And again, if you think the hobby is hurting, look at some of these recent sales. I think quite the opposite is the case. So speaking of products, let's talk about them. Bowman has a release date. It's May 22nd. Product will feature new yellow parallels. orange border, hobby exclusive. It's a 100 card base card set with the 150 prospect. Also, the prospects, as we all know, also have a chrome parallel as well. Not a parallel, but a chrome edition. Some new inserts in this year's Bowman spanning the globe. The 1990 Bowman Chrome Anniversary inserts and the Hidden Fine inserts, which will feature guys that were late round draft picks that turned out to be better than people expected. So that will be out shortly, and it'll be interesting to see what the Bowman First Edition does once the Bowman 2020 drops. Chronicles Footballs is making its debut. When you're hearing this, it may be already out. I've become a big Chronicles fan the last 2 years. Not the first year of Chronicles baseball, which was brutal, but the last few years, Panini has done a great job with that product. So be interesting to see what the football looks like. Topps T206 are back. The small mini cards will be an online exclusive from Topps, obviously. Minimum max orders 20 packs, $14.99 a pack. They will have the famous different variation backs like the originals had, and so I know a lot of people kind of are a little bit down on that. I'm kind of interested to see. I kind of gotten the last few years of, I used to hate those little mini cards, and they've kind of I've taken a liking to them. So I'll probably, if I can, if Les Topps pulls another, Bowman First and the site just crashes, I will be picking up some of the T206s. See how many I can get. Speaking of Topps, the 2020 project continues to go crazy on the secondary market. And on the Topps 2020 front, as I announced on Twitter, I will be interviewing over the course of the next few months the majority of the Topps 2020 artists. So look for artists. I'll try to stagger the interviews so they're not always back to back to back. But really happy. These guys are talented guys. What they're creating, the timing of it is impeccable. Wasn't planned like that by Topps, but the fact that we're going through the pandemic, I think is one of, not the only reason, but one of the reasons that the Topps 2020 project is a huge success. And a lot of these guys are tremendous artists, and Topps even incorporated people sort of outside of true artists, jewelers and designers, to put their interpretation on 20 iconic rookie cards. And I got to be honest with you, I know there's some negativity with it, but I'm digging it. The only thing I do hope in regards to the 2020 project, I hope it's not something Topps does every year. You caught lightning in the bottle with it, I think, this year, and I just hope they don't, ruin a good thing and just try to make it an every year thing and get 20 different guys next year. And I just hope, one of the reasons, I know it's a weird analogy, but one of the reasons we like the Olympics so much is it's like every 4 years we look forward to it. If it's every year, it kind of wear out that luster. And so I hope, if anyone's listening from Topps, please don't make the 2020 project every year. In other words, 2021 project next year. Space it out, whether it's 4 or 5 years, 6 years. I think if you do it under those terms, it really will stand the test of the time. I think if you beat this up every year, it's going to lose. The bloom's going to come off the rose. So I'm on board with the 2020 project, and you'll hear me talking to many of the artists in the next few months. The Star Stock selling platform has launched. They are now in beta. Currently, you can deposit, purchase cards, view your collection, and flip those cards back on the marketplace. With so much more to be built, StarStock is building a sports card marketplace aimed to be faster and cheaper for flipping sports cards than any other platform. They are currently looking for people who want to submit their cards to sell on this new platform. Here's what they offer: 5% commissions, no ingestion fees. You send in your cards and they do all the work. Cards are guaranteed and secure in their vault, and you can choose to ship cards back at any time. You can buy, flip, store, or ship cards with the click of a button. It's that easy. If you're interested in getting involved as a seller, contact Mike at starstock.com. That's Mike at starstock.com. StarStock is only looking for rookie cards and prospects of current players. Again, for more details, call Mike at starstock.com.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Commence interview sequence.
Joining me now on the One of One Card Shop guest line, he's the owner and proprietor of Sportlots LLC, a very popular selling and buying platform. I'm a user myself, so I can attest to that. I'm glad he's given the show some time today. Mr. Max Steiner, welcome to Sports Card Nation.
Well, thank you, John. Glad to be part of the show.
No problem. So, first thing, it's the standard hobby podcast kind of question, but we have to ask it kind of how, your card background. Did you collect as a kid? How did this all, where did the early stages of the hobby start for you?
Yeah, so being from Wisconsin, of course, I'm a Packer fan.
Yeah.
And a football fan more than anything else. And started collecting, me and my buddies, in the mid to early 70s. And I continued collecting up until about 1980. Oh, just football. When I was bored and football season was out, I did buy a bunch of baseball and basketball cards. But somehow those got thrown away at some point, unfortunately. But it was kind of a funny story. In 73 was the first year I collected, and all my friends, it was, we were little kids at the time, and I think packs were maybe 15 cents a piece back then.
Yeah.
And so you had limited resources when you were a kid. You were scrounging through couches and junk drawers to get money to go and run and get a couple packs of cards.
Yeah.
And we always had a race to see who could fill the set first. So and it got hard once you had 10 or 15 cards left. It was hard to get those last few cards. And funny story is, I still remember this day. One of my friends was one card short. He was missing the Roger Worley card from the 73 set, and couldn't find it. We would go to grade school, and he would try to get the card and trade for other cards, and we would literally compete with him and give these people stacks and stacks of cards just to prevent him from getting a Roger Worley card. So who knows how many Franco Harris cards, rookie cards I threw in a big pile to get a Roger Worley card just to prevent him from getting the set before me.
Yeah, that's funny. Competitive even in the younger days and whatnot.
Yeah. Unfortunately, those cards are all pretty beat up.
Yeah. Well, that's a common story. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there is no such thing as grading cards at that point.
Yeah.
You handle them well. You put them in your bikes, folks. We used to play actual football on the floor, on the carpeting, and my Bart Starr card would run into Ray Nitschke and smash it up, and so changed me to this day, but good memories.
Yeah, that's what we did. I mean, I started in 1979, and we didn't know what the future was going to hold with the hobby, and this stuff's going to be, what it's worth as we know today, and it's the old saying, if we knew then what we know now, we'd be. But yeah, that's that. But that was the fun of it. It's funny, Max. Growing up in that time period myself, I appreciate that. I did. Even though the hobby has changed, I'm glad I also got to experience it kind of in its purest form. I was talking with Rich Miller last week about that very thing, and he kind of said the same thing. He's a little bit older than me too, but he said you appreciate it more because you were in it before what we know its incarnation today.
Yeah, you feel bad about it, but I wouldn't trade those memories for any near mint Franco Harris card.
Yep.
It's great memories.
Yeah. So do you still collect today? I know obviously running sports lots probably takes a good amount of your time, but do you still collect yourself?
Well, what I've done is I've done a little dabbling in still the old stuff, but looking to get and acquire PSA graded high quality old stuff from the early 70s. I really haven't done much of that in the last 5 or 6 years. I have a 72-73 basketball full set, PSA graded. Yeah. And they're almost all 9s or 10s.
Wow.
So that took me a lot of time and a lot of dole. I didn't realize what I was getting to when I first started doing it. I had a whole bunch of really great conditioned ones, so I thought I'd submit them. Yeah. And I said, hey, what the heck? Let's go ahead and get this full set. Well, I didn't realize back then how much the limited, the low population commons were selling for. You can, a no-name guy with a population of, 3 or 4 PSA 9s, you could pay a couple $100 for that card. Yeah. I didn't realize that at the time. It ended up being a lot more expensive endeavor than I was getting into.
Well, congrats on completing it. You got in too deep. You got to finish it. So, but
that's right.
It's something you can look back with pride and admire it and know what went into completing it. And I think for set builders, I used to be more earlier days of my collecting than I am now. But I remember finishing a set and just that sense of accomplishment, especially like the cliche goes, the last card's always the hardest. Like you mentioned the story with the Roger Worley. It's when you finally do get it and complete it, that sense of accomplishment. And I don't care if you're 12 years old or 52, it's still a great feeling. And to put that set together, kudos, in that variety, kudos to you.
And, it was a lot different back then. You didn't have internet, or you had your neighbor friends to help or to hinder, in our case, filling those sets up. It's a lot easier endeavor nowadays with the internet and, eBay and so on. But
yep. And you mentioned, now, correct me if I'm wrong, you launched Sports Lots in 2000?
Yes. It was actually, I had another phase of this even before that.
Yep, go ahead.
The launch of actual Sport Lots was right around 2000, maybe a little earlier than that, but yeah.
Yep. Was it, you mentioned how you were competitive with trying to finish the sets first and how difficult. Was that kind of the basis? I mean, what was the thought process in your initial, what you thought you wanted Sports Lots to kind of be and the purpose that you wanted it to serve?
Yeah, so actually before Sport Lots, I really focused in on as an auction site. And, the auction site is still around today, the auction portion of Sport Lots.
Yep.
It's a lot smaller. It was the primary purpose of what I started prior to Sport Lots. But you're right, and it's kind of observant of you is that it really kind of took my experiences into and it was geared toward that is a place for people to fill their sets, fill their player sets, like people collect players, team players. It's interesting seeing some orders come in. Sometimes you sit back and think, what are they collecting? And all of a sudden you realize they're kind of volunteer fan because they've got all the pro players that played for Tennessee, or so it's kind of interesting to see sometimes you see these, and you're trying to figure out what are they collecting, and so sometimes it's hard to figure that out. Sometimes it's pretty easy.
Yeah, and
it's really what it was designed for.
Yeah,
it's different from other sites where they're focused on the high end rare inserts, the real old vintage expensive cards. I took a different approach, to really focusing on people filling their set needs, whether it's a yearly brand set like a Topps, or a team set or a player collection.
Yeah, and you make great points. Whether you collect a certain pro team or you're looking for all guys that played at the University of what and what, or you're just a super collector of a particular player, you've got it where you can go to Sportlots, and people who use the site obviously know this, but for those that may not be aware of this, you can go there, search in any form or fashion, and all that inventory that's on the site will come up. The other nice thing about, especially if you collect a known player, many of the cards, you have it where the card, a lot of the cards are 18 cents, and there's Mike Trout's for 18 cents and Emmett Smith's, and I mean, you name the player, and they start it as low as 18 cents, and so it's a great way, in my opinion, and many others, to accumulate cards and not break the bank. And the sellers kind of set their shipping kind of what they want, and there's budget shipping, so the shipping doesn't kill you. That's always another thing, is it's always hard to buy a lesser value card when you only can get it in a bubble mailer and it's $3 or $4, and we all know we love them, USPS, but every year they're not lowering their rates, and they're in financial trouble still. And so it's always nice to be able to get that shipping at that lower rate. Fill this, whatever your needs are, whether it be you're finishing a set, you're collecting all of a player, or for whatever the niche is, like you mentioned, Sportlots really kind of fills that void where, like you said, some of the other platforms maybe are a little more geared to the more expensive or high-end stuff, solely. And it's nice to have, where all bases are covered. You guys do a great job of that. I got to ask you, it's something I actually always wondered about. I don't, a lot of times I ask a question on the show, Max, I kind of know the answer already, and I'm asking for the listeners to get the answer. This is one that I don't know the answer myself before asking a question, so I'm just as curious as maybe other people. Is this a one-man operation? Have you taken this entity on like all yourself?
For most of the time, it was a one-man operation. I developed it myself.
Yeah.
For the web developers out there, I coded it all in Notepad.
Yeah.
By hand. All through the early 2000s, up until about 5 years ago, it was a one-man show. When I started increasing in size, especially when we started bringing on box shipping, which I hope we can get into a little more detail on at some point.
Yep.
It became a lot more labor intensive. Bringing in all the cards into our mail room, loading them into people's boxes, shipping out all the boxes. Had to really start looking at bringing on more help to help get some of those things done.
Yeah, and I'm going to let you talk about it. I've had two incarnations with Sportlots. I don't remember when it was. It was years ago. I started an account, listed some stuff. More user error, Max, truth be told, more on me, and I stopped kind of doing it, and then I came back, and the second go around, I've had a lot more success, and again, the first foray was me. Now, I'm not complaining about the site itself. It was just me not doing the right things, kind of not putting enough stuff on there and that sort of thing, and then drifting away from it. And then coming back, being more dedicated and more focused, it's a lot better. Again, that's solely on the user portion of it. But are you
referring to as a buyer or a seller?
Both, but more as a seller is where I didn't list enough stuff. I probably listed it at certain things too high. I didn't do my due diligence and whatnot. But a second go around, a little more knowledgeable about how to do it, what I should be doing, and it's a lot better for me. Again, that's not on Sportlots as much as grasping the concept on my end. So, but coming back is when I noticed the box shipping option that you just spoke about. So I know what it is, but it's a great segue. You wanted to mention it. I'll have you know better than you yourself to kind of explain how that process works.
Sure. So the thought process is, and you mentioned a little bit about the low-value cards and the ability to buy a wide range of cards. You know, let's say you collect. I'll speak to Aaron Rodgers since he's a Packer.
Yeah.
And you collect Aaron Rodgers cards, and you know Aaron Rodgers has got thousands and thousands of cards out there. And for you to fill that collection would be a major undertaking, not only in price, but you know even the later end cards aren't that expensive, but there's so many of them. And to try to buy those from one or two or three different sellers is just not realistic. No one has got that kind of collection of Aaron Rodgers cards.
Yeah.
So in order to buy them all and get a large quantity of them, you now have to purchase from 30, 40, 50 different sellers on the site.
Yeah.
Well, that becomes, even with, you know, premium shipping, you know, I'm buying more expensive cards. I want to make sure they're well protected. I'm willing to pay a little bit more for shipping to make sure they're protected well. Budget is a step down where you're saying I'm buying a few 18-cent cards. I really don't want to spend $3 on shipping to get 5 18-cent cards.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to give the seller a little leniency here to say, you know, I might ship them in a PWE. I might ship them with a couple pieces of cardboard between them. I'm going to try to find a cheaper way to get you those cards at a lower rate. Make postage a little bit more affordable. Well, box shipping goes a step further and says, you know, if I'm buying from 50 different sellers or even 10 different sellers, 15 different sellers, I've got to pay that shipping to get from each of those 15 sellers to get them to me all individually. Well, the thought process behind the Sportlots boxes is I'll let these sellers accumulate orders across their account, and all the box orders that they have over maybe the course of a week, let's say, they can ship them all to Sportlots directly. So it's a lot cheaper for the seller to send 15 5-card orders in one package to Sportlots than it is to send 15 5-card orders to 15 different buyers. So the shipping costs are much more affordable for them to send one shipping to Sportlots. It's also easier for them because they don't have to put postage on each one, you know, get the address for each person, get them on, you know, it's a lot easier for them to throw 15 orders in a box and ship it to them, or in a bubble mailer and ship it to one place. So not only is it cheaper, it's easier too.
Yeah, it's smart.
So now Sportlots brings in all these orders, and we open them up, weigh each one, and put it in each individual's buyer's box. And they can now let them accumulate in their box and pay one shipping charge from their box to their location. Okay? So what they have to be careful of is, you know, there's still premium and budget, and there's still options that are even used more often today than box shipping. But it's just another option for them to have. If they're ordering from a lot of different sellers, and those sellers are offering really good discounts in shipping, that's another option for them to select. And some people some people accumulate 300-400 orders in a box.
Yeah.
And they're saving hundreds of dollars on shipping when they do that. Now, if you buy from one or two different sellers, it's probably not a wise move to use box shipping because there's a delay in that process and there's two shipping costs. So you have to make sure you get enough discount from those sellers to make up for that second shipping cost.
Well, it's a great option. I think it's you can speak to this, man. I think it's probably led to more sales and more buyers. Ease on the sellers as well, and obviously they're going to be happy because they're probably making more sales that they might have lost because the option wasn't there. I think it's just a really intelligent feature, and I'm sure it's you've noticed a difference since you've incorporated it.
Yes, I have. And you know, another interesting point to this is coming up in about a week or two is two new enhancements with box shipping. You know, the two biggest issues that I hear about is one, they don't know how much that shipping's going to cost for that box shipment until after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've done is I'm going to be adding a calculator that's going to take and tell you how much you're going to save by selecting box shipping, and two, we're going to try to estimate for the buyers ahead of time how much that box shipping is going to cost prior to the cards actually arriving at Sport Lots. So it's always difficult because we don't know how much those packages are going to weigh from the sellers before they ship them to us. So it's always difficult for us to figure out ahead of time how much it's going to cost. So what we're going to do now is, if I get a 5-card order from seller A, I know from past historical experience that a 5-card order from this seller weighs 2 ounces. So I can estimate ahead of time for that buyer that we expect that package from that buyer is going to be 2 ounces in weight.
Yeah.
So we kind of do some analytical work and try to figure out as best as we can for the customer how much that box is going to be prior to actually making the purchase.
Yeah, and that's huge too. It kind of gives them a gauge to know, where their price level's at and what they have to spend. And again, another nice feature. It's nice to hear too that you're implementing new strategies, new programs to make the site better. That's always a good thing. We're going to step away for a quick break, but we'll be right back with more Max Steiner. Pastime Marketplace offers a line of durable graded card cases made for collectors who want high-quality graded card storage that is virtually indestructible. Their cases are waterproof, dustproof, airtight, and designed to protect your valuable collection. Check them all out at www.pastimemarketplace.com. Protect your best with the best. And we are back with Max Steiner from Sportlots. For me, I want to highlight some of the things I love about Sportlots. And then a year ago on our Twitter page, I asked people who use Sportlots, like, if you could change one thing. And so I did sort of a poll, and people responded. I'll mention some of the things. I'm sure some of it you've probably heard before, and I'll have you speak to it. But some of the stuff we've kind of covered. If you're looking for the finish a set, or you're a super collector or player and you can't find certain cards, or you collect a team or players, like Max said, from a university you're fond of, that's how you approach your collecting. Sportlots obviously checks all those boxes. You can search by any of those forms, type in a player name, search by set, and purchase the cards. Many of the cards are 18 cents, and including many stars and superstar cards. So it's a great way to get some big names without big name prices. You do a seller report card where people can see the reputation of the seller before making the purchase, and vice versa. And dispute resolution. You don't hear a lot of issues. You kind of take care of them and nip it in the bud. And I'll throw them under the bus because they've sort of earned a reputation. eBay is the opposite to me of that. That's kind of like the wild, wild west. And you're sort of, with Sportlots, you're kind of on top of that. If you have a seller that's not kind of holding up their end of the deal, you handle it, and then vice versa, and that's nice. I think sellers and buyers both appreciate that. And here's another one: to list anything, it doesn't cost anything. As a seller, you can put 20,000 cards on the site. It's not going to cost you nothing. It costs you, when you sell the cards, and you can't beat that. It's one of my, I don't want to say pet peeves, but listing fees can sometimes kill you, especially if you wanted to list quite a bit of stuff, and that's not going to happen with you guys at Sportlots. So those are just some of the things. Those are the things that I appreciate. Now, when I asked that question a year ago on the timeline for Twitter, some of the things that got mentioned, I'll pick the top three, and then I'll let you speak to that. Some folks said the site sort of not as modern day as maybe another selling platform. me personally, as long as it functions and, it's not a beauty contest to me, as long as it does what it needs to do and I can list and buy what I need to list and buy. But that was one. The other is sometimes when a new set comes out, new product, new brand comes out, sometimes they don't have this would be for a buyer and a seller, is sometimes it's not as quick getting onto the platform as someone might like. The other one is the selling. You have to sell a certain amount each month, or the selling fees can be a little high in their opinion. So those are the three big ones, or the most common ones. I wanted to give you to kind of speak to those, and there's two sides to every story, as they say.
Sure. Okay. So I should have wrote these down. What was the first one again?
About the site maybe not being as modernized as some other, all the bells and whistles, if you will.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So, and they're right. This site was developed in the early 2000s. We have made incremental improvements. I think it looks a lot different than it did in 2002 or 2005. It isn't as modern. I fully agree with that statement. It hopefully is functional. I think there are some things, again, Sportlots is not eBay. We don't have 500 developers.
Yeah.
We have me.
Yeah.
And you can tell from my age, I collected in the 70s. I went to college in the 80s. I'm an IT developer by trade, but I came from an era, and my education is from an era that prior to the internet.
Yeah.
So a lot of this I'm learning on my own, developing it on my own. So a lot of it is that, but there also has been a lot of improvements. There are some things, for example, that are coming up that are going to really improve the site. Is on the search results. One of the big complaints about the modernization of it is when you add an item to your shopping cart, the screen kind of has to refresh. It says, add it to your shopping cart. The whole screen refreshes, and it's very inefficient that way. We'll be making changes later this year that will happen more real time. You won't have to refresh the page.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a modernization thing. When it was developed in the early 2000s, that particular screen, that kind of capability wasn't available. So we'll be adding some modernizations to those screens. I'm sure there's others I can't think of off the top of my head, but we will always progress and continue to modernize it as time allows me to. I'm always going to make sure that addressing customers' issues and needs first. I'm always going to make sure that dealers get paid on a timely basis. So those things always take top priority for me. But as I have time, I'm always looking to add enhancements. Improve the site, improve the functionality. And again, I'm going to focus on functionality, correcting issues and errors over presentation.
Yeah.
But I always look to make improvements in that direction as well, too.
Yeah, and I agree. It does look different than, I mentioned it kind of being two forays into it myself. It looks, coming back the second time and using it now, it looks different than when I remembered it. So, like you said, you're implementing new features, new positive things. You're progressing. I don't need it. Doesn't need to be super shiny as long as it works. You could have a really shiny website, and if behind the shiny is not so shiny, then what good did that really do? So I agree with you there, and I'll stick up with you there. And the other one, just the second one that I'll mention, you kind of covered with the brands, but sellers complaining that if they don't sell over a certain amount each month, that those fees are a little bit higher, I guess. But here's what I would say to them too, Max, and I'll let you speak, but I got a feeling, you got to remember you're getting to list your stuff without any kind of listing fee. So, you know what I mean? It's you can't have your cake and always eat it too. I mean, it's nice when you can, but that's what when I hear that complaint, that's where I go with, if I was you, you know what I mean? That's how I would answer that.
Yeah, I'll tell you my thought process behind that, because I think, and again, off the top of my head, I think the fees are 75% of your sales if you earn under $5 a month.
Yeah.
That is absurd. It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
75%. But that's done on purpose.
Yeah.
For two reasons. One, I want to make sure dealers are incentivized to get their inventory loaded, not to just add a few and say, I'll get around to that someday. I want to make sure and give them incentives to continue to get better, to earn more, to get larger, to get those sales up.
Yep.
The other reason for that is, I honestly, there's an administrative fee for every seller on the site. There's a learning curve for them. They have questions, so I necessarily smaller sellers on the site are never going to be worth their while to list cards. To list cards, it's not designed for people to have 50 cards and load them out there.
Yeah.
So it's also a way, if you want to sell on the site and you're really, really, really small, I would say take advantage of the auctions section of the site.
Yeah.
If you're only going to list 100 cards and that's all you have, now granted, if you have 100 $100 cards,
yeah.
Well, that's worth it. Because if you make one sale, it's $100. You can not to pay high fees.
Yeah.
But really, if you sell $5 worth of cards and we're charging 75%,
yeah,
that's for us $3. It's not the fee. It's more of I want to encourage them to get bigger, motivate them to continue to load cards. And what I would say is, if they have a lot of cards, but they don't have a whole lot of time to get them listed, put your account on vacation. So people can't see them until you build up your inventory, and then snap the light switch and take it off vacation. Once you've got your cards loaded, or a good volume of your cards loaded, if you want to avoid those higher fees, I would suggest to them to say, put your stuff on vacation, let your inventory build, and then turn it on when you're ready, instead of paying those higher fees.
Yeah, that's a great point too. And hearing your explanation, Max, it does make sense to me. I mean, you number one, you want people to list enough stuff on there, so there's a selection. So that's one of the reasons. And then the other thing you mentioned is you want people to be competitive with the prices. You don't want them to, you want them to list stuff at prices where a buyer can get them at a fair price or a great deal, and then in turn the seller moves more quantity to get over that threshold where that seller's fee comes down. And as someone who sells on the site and buys, it makes sense. So I guess I would say, again, I don't want to speak for you. You're right here, but to me, if someone's complaining about the fees, the selling fees, it's probably a combination of one or two things. Like you said, maybe you don't have enough inventory on there yet. Like you said, put it on vacation mode, build that arsenal up, and then open the door to the store. You know what I mean? Or maybe you got to look within and say, am I pricing this non-competitively, and so I'm not selling as much? Even though I have a lot of stuff listed, I'm not making enough sales. Maybe that's sort of a you problem, meaning the seller. Maybe you got to look at your pricing and see is the price you're setting competitive in the market, or is it too high and you're not getting those sales and other sellers are. You got to, it's not always everyone's fault. You got to look sometimes within. And so hearing that explanation, I never really kind of thought of it like that, but it makes a world of sense when you think about it.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. If you have a lot of cards listed, if you have, thousands and thousands and thousands of cards listed, and you're still not able to get very high sales, let's say you're struggling getting $10, $15, $20 a month.
Yeah.
I would really look at, one, like you said, competitive pricing. Make sure you're competitive with your pricing, and look for ways to get bumped up higher on the list. Because if you're selling 1987 Topps baseball, you're probably 100th on the list, and no one's going to see your cards. So there are things you can do if you really want to sell those. You can bump up by lowering your prices.
Yeah.
I think everything's at 18 cents for that set anyway. But two, lower your box shipping rates.
Yeah.
That'll jump you up high on the priority list. Or take the time to put pictures out there. that'll jump you up on the priority list and get your inventory more viewable, which will result in more sales. So, I think the key is good customer service, getting higher up on the list if you have, pretty common cards, or three, having very unique inventory.
No, it's great points. And again, a lot of people, they like to point fingers first and then ask questions second. But, again, that's why I'm glad you came on, because we can clear up some of those debates and, bugaboos, if you will. And I appreciate that. It sounds like there's, Sports Lots is evolving. You got new, from the box shipping, and you got more things coming, the quicker refreshes. And so for the existing users, they're going to notice a lot of improvements, and for new users coming in, they're going to get a better Sport Lots, and you can't argue with that. I know it's evolving as cards get listed and sell. Do you know approximately how many cards are listed on Sports Lots at around this current time?
Yeah, the last I looked, we were at 74 million cards on the site.
Wow.
And that kind of speaks to the functionality versus the presentation. A lot goes into searching 75 million cards and getting results back quickly. It's a challenge. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, technically, to make that. When you search for Aaron Rodgers and click that button, to have those results come back quickly. There's a lot going on behind the scenes to make that come back quick.
And the thing is, when you think about 74 million cards, the chances are, if you're looking for something, you got a really good chance to find it on Sports Lots. And so, that's quite the inventory. And, and every single one of those cards that are listed, again, seller did not have to pay any listing fees. Like other places can't boast that. So
that's definitely a different approach that allows you to list tons of cards, and that's why we have a lot of inventory, is because there is no listing fees. There's people on the site that have 3 million cards on the site listed.
Yeah.
There's no way with a listing fee like an eBay, where you're paying, I don't even know what the rate is. Let's say 5 cents an item to list it.
Yeah, it's more than that too, man. So
yeah. Imagine what that costs.
Yeah, 3 million cards. Yeah, 3 million cards on eBay. You have to sell your house, and then
every month.
So yeah, and so that's the one thing as a seller. If I only could pick one, only could pick one thing as a seller, that's a huge selling point. So, but again, Max, thank you for coming on. It sounds like there's going to be some new features, which is always good. I always give the guest on the show kind of the final word, give out, the website, and anything you want to share with those listening with Sports Lots.
Well, again, I just appreciate you having me come on. I'd be more than willing to come on again sometime in the future if you'll have me.
Oh, anytime.
About different enhancements that are coming up, or whatever you want to discuss, I'd be more than happy to do that. And just want to make sure you and your listeners all stay safe. This is kind of a crazy time going on right now, but hopefully this is all over soon, and we can move on to our regular lives again. Yeah, no doubt. And the website, is it? I just have it bookmarked, so it's sportslots.com. Sports, S-P-O-R-T, lots, sportlots.com. Sportlots, okay. Yep. And you type that in any search function, it should be the first thing that comes up. It's very easy to find. And so as someone who uses it on the selling and buying end, I love the site. I fell more in love with it the second go round. Again, for me, that first time was more me just kind of being lazy and not doing due diligence with how to use it. So you definitely have to have a plan going into it. Yep. Yeah, the first time not so much. Now I grasp the concept, as they say. So, Max, and again, you mentioned coming. We'd love any time you want to come on, or even just pop in and, hey, this is new on the site. You're welcome. Sounds great. Thank you.
Let me tell you about Iron Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're your number one source for all your PSA grading submission needs. They're constantly submitting, so they are always at the ready when you're ready. They offer various turnaround levels at the lowest prices around. Cards are insured to and from PSA at no additional cost to you. And they even provide the card savers your precious cards need to be put in before being sent to PSA. They take care of that for you. And because of their elite status at PSA, they have some of the best turnaround times around. They even have group chats for each submission, so you know exactly where your status is on your cards. They have open dialogue and open communication. What are you waiting for? Contact Rob on Facebook on Iron Sports Card Group. That's Iron Sports Card Group on Facebook. Or get a hold of Rob on Twitter at Iron Sports Cards. All one word, at Iron Sports Cards. They'll take care of you. One of One Card Shop offers a tremendous breaking experience, great customer service, and they're constantly pulling fire. Steve and his family take care of you like one of their own and treat you right. Anyone can break, but no one treats you like One of One. Come check them out on Instagram at one_of_one_card_shop. For all the hot breaks, get a gold mailer headed your way. That concludes another episode of Sports Card Nation. Want to thank my guest, Mr. Max Steiner of Sports Lots, for bringing some insight into his selling platform. 20 years going strong. Some new wrinkles on the horizon as well to make the experience even more simple and enjoyable. Like you heard me say during the interview, my second foray with Sports Lots has been night and day, way better than my first. And the first one, frankly, was user error. Me not knowing how to properly use it and setting bad price levels, not putting enough stuff on. That's on me. That's not on the platform itself. So, Hobby Quick Hits, if you're listening to the show, our next episode there will be Tuesday, and it will be about all these selling platforms. We're going to talk about what I consider the four main ones. We'll go in chronological order from the first to the newest, the pros, the cons, and a little bit of the history there as well. So that'll be probably Tuesday on Hobby Quick Hits, probably Tuesday the 19th. If you listen to that show's really picked up some traction. And again, thank everyone that listens to that show as well. Again, 15-20 minutes in, out, and done. No guests, to the point, and wrap it up. So if you like to consume your stuff quicker, that show is probably right up your alley. Again, some upcoming guests next week on episode 77. My guest will be Jeff Dinson, but you may know him better as Deafness45. He's a content creator in his own right, does a great job, very positive person, and he came from, hit a rough patch, and he got out of it. We're going to talk about all that and also talk about what he's doing now. Some other guests that you're going to see in future episodes. We're going to have some more of the Tops 2020 project artists on to pick their brain a little bit about how they go about their artwork, how they got into art, how they got collaborating with Tops. I find that whole concept interesting. Yes, some of the other, it's beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Some of it I like, some of it I'm not fond of, but that's the beauty of it. You're allowed to form your own opinion. So I have some of those talented artists on the show as well, and more hobby dignitaries to come, some giveaways, who knows what. So another thing I wanted to mention, we had Rich Miller on from Sports Collectors Daily, my favorite site. and we may be doing some collaboration there as well. So be on the lookout for that. So a lot of things coming. Stay with us, and I appreciate you staying with us. And if you're so inclined, if you enjoy the show, whether you listen to an episode here and there, or you're a religious follower and don't miss an episode, please go to iTunes or whatever platform you're fond of. And if you're so inclined, please give us a positive review. We do really appreciate those. It's a definite way to spread the word and let more people know about the content we produce. So it doesn't take very long. We appreciate it, and it costs nothing to do it. So once again, thanks for joining us. We'll see you in 7 days.